Before he became the Golden State Killer, he was something else quieter, calculated, and just as terrifying. In 1974, a small town of Visalia, California, nestled in the San Joaquin Valley, felt like a safe haven. Neighbors knew each other by name. Families left their doors unlocked. Kids played outside until dusk. The biggest worry? A late harvest. But something sinister was brewing beneath the surface. A man was watching. He moved through the shadows, unnoticed, slipping into homes under the cover of night. He didn't take much, just small, intimate things. A single earring, a few coins, a family photo. The police called him the Visalia Ransacker. They thought he was a petty thief, maybe a troubled teen. They were wrong. Between 1974 and 1975, this silent predator broke into more than 120 homes. His victims were varied young couples, single women, families. He moved silently as they slept, his footsteps muffled on hardwood floors. Drawers were pulled open, closets left in chaos. Sometimes he took nothing, just scattered papers, moved furniture. A signal. I was here. One woman woke to find her underwear neatly laid out on her bed. She hadn't heard a sound. Another family discovered their daughter's stuffed animal on the kitchen table, a button missing from its eye. These weren't just break-ins. They were psychological warfare. He wanted them to feel watched, vulnerable, violated. The ransacker had a signature. He often stole just one of a pair: an earring, a sock, a glove. It wasn't random. It was ritual, a message, or maybe a compulsion. He studied his targets obsessively, learned their routines, when they left for work, when they walked the dog, which windows were loose, which fences were easy to climb. He was methodical, precise, a ghost who left no fingerprints, no clues, only fear. Sometimes he lingered longer than necessary. Victims would later notice furniture rearranged in subtle ways, photo frames turned to face the wall, or open books resting in odd places, as if he'd made himself at home. These chilling touches gave the impression he wasn't just breaking in, he was absorbing the lives he disturbed. One of the earliest glimpses into his boldness came from a retired schoolteacher named Margaret. She lived alone on Goshen Avenue. One night in April 1974, her dog barked furiously. She grabbed a flashlight, heart pounding, and crept to the living room. The back door stood slightly ajar. On the coffee table sat a single child's sock, her grandson's. She hadn't left it there. Nothing else was missing. But the message was unmistakable. He'd been inside, and he wanted her to know. Visalia began to change. Neighbors, once cheerful, now eyed each other with suspicion. Some believed he was local, a man they passed at the store. Others whispered he was an outsider, drawn to the town's innocence. The Visalia Times-Delta urged residents to install deadbolts and keep lights on at night. Women slept with knives under pillows. Men patrolled their yards, baseball bats in hand. But the ransacker always slipped through. One neighbor even built a makeshift alarm system with bells and cans strung across his backyard fence, desperate to catch the phantom that haunted their nights. Fear was now woven into the fabric of daily life. Kids who once rode their bikes freely now stayed indoors. Halloween that year saw fewer porch lights and empty streets. Families stopped hosting barbecues. Churches reported a rise in attendance. People were looking for comfort, for control, for protection. Visalia wasn't just scared, it was transforming. Some families went as far as pulling their children out of school, homeschooling them until they felt the threat had passed. Others began rotating their sleep schedules so someone was always awake. It wasn't just fear, it was full-scale behavioral change. The ransacker had turned an entire town into his playground of paranoia. Then, in September 1975, everything escalated. Beth, a shy 16-year-old who loved mystery novels, was home with her father, Claude Snelling, a professor at the College of the Sequoias. That night, Beth went to bed early. Her window cracked open. The air was cool, the house silent. At 2 a.m., she woke to a creak in the hallway. A masked man stood in her doorway. She screamed. Claude rushed from his room, bare feet pounding. The intruder grabbed Beth, dragging her toward the back door. Claude lunged, fists flew, a gun flashed, one shot. Claude collapsed. The masked man fled. Beth, sobbing, crawled to her father, pressed her hands to the wound, but it was too late. Claude Snelling became the Ransacker's first known murder victim. Visalia was shattered. A petty thief had become a killer. Fear consumed the town. Patrols increased. Police staked out neighborhoods. But he was always one step ahead. In December, Officer Bill McGowan spotted a suspicious man near a home previously targeted. He crept closer through thick fog. "Freeze!" he shouted. The man turned masked, tense. He fired. The bullet grazed McGowan's arm. The man vanished into the night. A trail of blood led to a fence. Then, nothing. The Visalia Ransacker was gone. Months passed. The break-in stopped. The town exhaled, but warily. Parents double-checked locks. Shotguns rested by bedsides. Children no longer played outside after dark. A wound had been left, one that wouldn't heal. But he wasn't gone. He was evolving. In 1976, 200 miles north in Sacramento, a new nightmare began. Women woke to find a masked man in their bedrooms, tied them up, whispered threats, ransacked their homes. Sometimes he took only one earring, just like before, but now he went further. He assaulted them. Sacramento called him the East Area Rapist. Jane, one of the first victims, lived in a quiet suburb, a single mother with a son named Tommy. On June 18, 1976, she put Tommy to bed, locked the doors, checked the windows. At 4 a.m., she awoke to a blinding flashlight. A man stood over her, knife in hand, voice like gravel. "Don't move, or I'll kill you." He tied her with shoelaces, ate food from her fridge, flipped through photo albums, stared at pictures of her son. Hours passed. When he finally left, he took a single earring from her dresser. Jane survived, but her life was never the same. The East Area Rapist struck again and again, more than 50 times, over 3 years. He cut phone lines, disabled lights, targeted couples, tied up the men, assaulted the women. In one case, he stacked dishes on a man's back. "If I hear them move," he said coldly, "she dies." He sometimes called victims after the attacks, whispering threats weeks or even months later, as if to remind them, "I still know where you are." Some reported hearing breathing on the line. Others heard a chilling phrase repeated in a whisper, "I'll be back." One survivor later described the fear as never-ending. "Even when he left," she said, "he stayed. In the mirrors, in the corners, in the silence." Another victim moved across the country, only to return years later for therapy and closure. His presence haunted far beyond California. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of something far bigger, something escalating. Sacramento descended into fear. Neighborhood watches formed. Hardware stores sold out of locks. Dogs barked all night. Still, he slipped through. Police saw patterns. The single earring, the stalking, the planning. Slowly, the truth emerged. The East Area Rapist and the Visalia Ransacker were the same man, and he was just getting started. In Part 2, we'll dive deeper into his Sacramento reign, the chilling tactics, the shattered lives, and the trail of clues that would one day lead to his capture. What do you think he was planning back in Visalia? Was he always destined to kill? Or did something push him over the edge? Share your theories in the comments, I read everyone. Don't miss part 2 this Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and prepare yourself because the nightmare is far from over.